U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan discusses in Riyadh peace efforts in Yemen. Released prisoners from Houthi jails reveal subjection to brutal torture during detention. Recurrent power outages deepen the suffering of Aden residents amid hot summer. Good evening. Welcome to Yemen Today TV. I am Abir Ali and you are watching the English news. The National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan has traveled to Jeddah to meet Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman and senior Saudi officials to discuss how advance a vision for secure, prosperous and stable Middle East region.
President Joe Biden sent his National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan to Saudi Arabia on Thursday for discussions with Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman as the White House presses for normalization of relations between the kingdom and Israel. Sullivan landed in Jeddah on Thursday for discussions with the Crown Prince and other Saudi officials, according to a statement from the White House. The extensive discussions included plans to advance a common vision for a more peaceful, secure, prosperous, and stable Middle East, and attempts to put an end to the protracted conflict between the Saudis and Iran's proxies in Yemen, the Houthis. Sullivan also reviewed significant progress to build on the benefits of the truce in Yemen that have endured over the past 16 months and welcomed ongoing UN-led efforts to bring the war to a close. According to a White House National Security Council member familiar with the situation, Sullivan and the prince also addressed the Biden administration's efforts to normalize ties between Israel and Saudi Arabia. For its part, the Saudi press agency acknowledged the meeting, saying only that the two sides discussed the Saudi-U.S. strategic relations and ways to enhance them in various fields, in addition to the latest regional and international developments of mutual concern. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken also visited Saudi Arabia in June. He used the trip to seek normalization of ties between Saudi Arabia and Israel, two longtime adversaries. Despite significant U.S.-Saudi connections, relations with Riyadh have been strained in recent years due to human rights conflicts such as the assassination of dissident journalist Jamal Khashoggi by a group linked to the Saudi royal palace, as well as Saudi efforts to boost oil prices in the aftermath of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Additionally, the Saudis recently provided China with a window into the political dynamics of the Middle East as Beijing mediated a tentative reconciliation between Riyadh and its rival, Tehran.
The advisor to the President of the Presidential Leadership Council discussed with the military advisor to the UN envoy developments in Yemen. He renewed the keenness of the Presidential Leadership Council and the government to end the war and establish peace based on the basic references. He also touched on what the Houthi militia is doing in terms of mobilizing its fighters to the battlefronts, which confirms that these militias do not care about the interest of the Yemeni people. Teachers continue their comprehensive strike in Sana'a until all their legitimate demands are met. Educational sources confirmed that the teachers' strike achieved 90% success in most public schools in Sana'a and the rest of the areas under the Houthi control. The sources pointed out that the militia rushed to announce for dispersing what it called a transfer allowance for school workers, amounting to 30,000 riyals for one teacher. Stories of abductees released from prisons of the terrorist Houthi militia. They were subjected to many types of violations and torture and spent years in prisons of the Houthi militia. This report has more details.
To lose your freedom and remain a hostage in jail, even for a short period, is not an easy matter that may affect the life of the person in prison. In Yemen, many citizens spend more than 8 years under torture and abuse in the prisons of the Houthi militia. This young man who spent more than 8 years in prison was subjected to all kinds of violations and torture. Majid tells part of what he was subjected to in prisons.
We were kidnapped from August 2015 until 2023. Houthi prisons are indescribable. We have forcibly disappeared our families. We're not told about our place for a long time. We are tortured from beatings to electric shocks. We call on the United Nations and the international organizations to hold the Houthis accountable for their actions.
Majid's story is not the only one, as there are thousands of Yemenis like him who have been subjected to worse types of violations and torture. They were imprisoned in Houthi jails because of their rejection of its destructive ideology. These people completely suffered in these Houthi jails, and the ones who were released from the prisons of Houthis were released with half bodies, while thousands are still in their prisons, awaiting an unknown fate.
We call to protect the rights of the people that were tortured, and we also call on authorities to hold the Houthis accountable for what they made these people go through.
Houthi militia did not abide by human rights and international laws in its inhumane treatment of abductees. It transgressed all international norms and laws, which forces the international community and the United Nations to stop the militia's practices and violations. They must be held accountable and forced to release the abductees and the disappeared people without condition or a record before any negotiations of peace to come.
The Secretary General of the League of Arab States welcomed the successful start of the process of unloading the Safir oil tanker. In a statement, he stressed that this operation was necessary to avoid an unprecedented marine environment disaster, welcoming all Arab and international efforts that contributed to this important operation. He called on the relevant parties to contribute to complete the financing of the remaining amount in order to successfully complete the task.
It's been a very good day today. Now we can move forward with our plan to offload the oil off the FSO Safir. By the end of this week, we should be able to start seeing the first oil being pumped into this vessel to secure it for the first time in 8 years and no longer represent a threat.
The Undersecretary of Shabwa Governorate discussed with the delegation of UAE the project of establishing a central power plant in Shabwa. He stressed the keenness of the local authority to facilitate and support the company's work, praising the Emirati intervention in the energy sector, while the director of Shabwa Electricity explained that the company had started conducting preliminary surveys for the project. Aden's power outages worsens as private generators cut supplies amid hot weather. This report has more details.
Power outages in Yemen's southern city of Aden worsened on Thursday as private electricity generators turned off supplies in protest over unpaid bills. Amid summer temperatures, the city's state-run electricity company reported that many of the private firms that supplied the city with electricity had progressively withdrawn their services in a bid to put pressure on the government to meet outstanding payments. Aden was among the cities liberated from the Houthi occupation in 2015, but it has been beset by escalating power outages, deteriorating infrastructure, and an economic collapse that has left thousands of its residents unemployed or struggling to make ends meet. Electricity supplies regularly drop out for long periods of the day when summer temperatures and humidity peak. Over recent months, the Yemeni government and Aden Governorate have traded verbal blows over who was to blame for failing to deal with the power supply crisis. In June, the governor said he would withhold state earnings and refrain from depositing them in Aden's central bank, in an attempt to force the Yemeni government to pay for power generation fuels, as well as overdue bills for purchased power. The government responded by saying it was committed to providing electricity to the people of Aden, and noted that it had spent nearly $1.8 million per day on maintaining power for 8 hours daily in Aden. Power services in the city reportedly absorb around 60% of state electricity expenditure across government-controlled areas of the country. Local officials in Aden were unavailable for comment on the situation, but a government official said that the Presidential Leadership Council had tasked one of its members with the job of finding a swift solution to the power outages problem in Aden, including by renting a floating power plant.
coming up in the news. Biggest market in Marib witnesses decline due to conflict.
أبي مات في شارع 40 دحين أنا أشقى على أسرتي مع باقي اللي أنا أصرف عليهم كل شيء. أنا اسمي أنس رصيد سيف، عمري 12 سنة. أنا أشتغل بورشة حديد من الساعة 7 للساعة 6. أحيانا أسرع، أحيانا أقص، أحيانا أرنق، أحيانا أنقش، أي حاجة أنا أعمل. لا الساعة لما تدين الساعة 6 أوقف. أنا وقفت الدراسة عشان ما فيش أحد يشقى على أسرتي، أدرس أخواني الباقي من دون 4 وأنا الخامس. أحلم إني أفتح ورشة أبي وأشقى على أسرتي وأندي لهم مصاري وأدرس أخواتي الآخر الجامعات وأطبخوا أي شيء.
Welcome back. The World Bank estimated reconstruction needed in Yemen at $25 billion during the war that broke out in late March 2015. The recently issued economic memorandum for Yemen stated that the data taken from the World Bank found that the housing sector was most affected by the conflict. The report indicated that 38% of the health facilities in Yemen, 34% of educational facilities, and 29% of fixed transport assets were damaged. The old market in Ma'rib Governorate represents the most important and prominent commercial market in the city due to its ancient history, but today it's witnessing an economic recession and almost complete paralysis of the shopping movement as a result of the economic situation and the high prices of products, which led the people's reluctance to shop and buy only the necessary needs. This report has more.
This scene reflects the current situation and the reality of the old market, showing the great weakness it has reached in the buying and selling movement. An economic recession paralyzed the commercial movement in this market as a result of the deterioration of the national currency. The place was almost empty of shoppers, as everyone began to complain about the current situation that threatens the population's livelihood.
I have been working here in this market since 1986. I'm one of the founders who established this old market. It was one of the best. All the residents in the area used to come here to buy their needs, but now the purchasing power has decreased significantly due to the increase in prices. That made citizens unable to buy the basic needs.
This old market was a shopping destination for many citizens of Ma'rib, as it contained all their belongings from clothing, household items, sewing, pottery, and many other items that belonged to their culture. But the prices inside the market are no longer what they were a long time ago, making the market empty of visitors and reducing the purchasing power.
The number of shoppers has decreased a lot, and the prices are increasing day after day. People are starving. They are not able to buy the necessary food supplies for their families and children, while they receive a very low income. This is the old market of Ma'rib Governorate. We used to sell and buy different products in this place, but now high prices have destroyed everything. People no more come to this market as before because prices are increasing day after day. As you can see, people come to the stores and leave without buying anything. Citizens are the only victim of the situation.
The war, economic decline, and government failure changed the reality of citizens' lives, and life became boring. It is associated with a series of suffering, displacement, and starvation that carry with it more burdens that disturb the lives of the people in the country.
The Minister of Public Health discussed with the Governor of Appian the health situation in the governorate. The Governor reviewed the conditions of the health sector, the difficulties it faces, the sector's need for development projects, and improving services in maternity and childhood centers. The minister affirmed the ministry's keenness to improve the work of health facilities in the governorate, stressing work to provide the necessary support. Here is a reminder of the main headlines. U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan discusses in Riyadh faces effort in Yemen. Released prisoners from Houthi jails reveal subjection to brutal torture during detention. Recurrent power outages deepens the suffering of Aden's residents amid hot weather. This is the end of the news. It was Abir Ali, and thank you for watching.